Welcome everybody back to class. It's a bloody sandy day in the neighborhood, and today we are talking about great swords. The greatest of the swords, allegedly. So a little thing into great swords before I even get into that smorgasbord. Great swords were typically made to use overwhelming power, like their weight and force, to give themselves both reach and chopping power, not thrusting power. Reach and chopping power to smash their way through the ranks. Some swords could pierce. Some great swords could pierce. I'm not going to lie to you there. Most of them, though, were two-handed, big grip swingers. We're going to start over here and work our way that way. Again, starting with the non-war, moving well into the war side. So, first off is our parade sword and our bearing swords. These guys are all about overcompensation. These swords were never meant to see the battlefield in any regard. They are way too big. These guys are driven into the ground and are still taller than me, and I'm 6'2". If I grab this bad boy and I pull him out of the sand here, there we go. Yeah, fuck that. No, he is heavy as shit. All right, that is some, yeah, that's some serious. My wrist is broken irreversibly. Holy shit. Yeah. There we go. Parade sword is actually the same size as the bearing sword, so I'm not. Can't even push it into the ground any further. I'm not going to even bother with drawing him out. He's just incredibly more ornate. This kind of sword would be wielded by somebody who wants to overcompensate their moderate wealth, because a blade that long would require a ton of money. A blade this ornate and long would require a shit ton of money. So these were usually wielded by retainers to the king. All right, they were just for hanging on the wall or carrying around in a parade. They were not meant to battle with. This one, on the other hand, more functional while also being for show. So this sword is the Scandinavian greatsword, which most great swords, as you'll see by like the massive hilts on those guys, the hilts on some of these guys, this bar, I'll get into that in a minute. The ones I've got on my back, I'll show you in a minute. They would normally use a massive end here, a massive end cap, to offset the weight of the blade. The Scandinavians were like, just make the fucking handle longer. And then you've got more leverage. And it's a really smart move. Now, this sword, really dull here at the bottom, that bells out into a sharp blade with a steady taper. Again, not a great tip, but then again, it's not meant for stabbing. And if you are stabbing somebody with this, you're charging forward and driving it through their whole body. All right? But more often than not, this dude, you're going to grip down here, you're going to grip up here, and you're going to be hacking on the enemy. Now, even if your enemy's in plate mail, this is going to do something. Because the weight of it is going to do something. It is going to bend their knees, buckle their body, and knock them to the ground. Pretty effectively. All right, now we're moving on to these two. This guy here, I wanted to put on my wall, but you can't hang the sheath of the sword on the wall. I could hang the actual sword on the wall, but I like the fact that it can be sheathed. I could wear it on my hip, but then I've got this thing sticking out everywhere I go. Anywho, this is the regent's sword. A regent was kind of like a land watcher for a king, kind of like a baron. Now, the reason I wanted to bring up the regent, the reason I wanted to bring up the regent's sword is that its handle is actually rather small for such a massive fucking blade that especially has no fuller, no weight reduction in it. And it's such a wide cross section here. Look at that. Look how wide that is. Sorry, I keep holding it up to my left eye. I forget that you guys are seeing what's in my right, which I'm blind in, by the way, so that's a fun news. The reason I wanted to bring up this sword is because this taper all the way to a fine point. This is a sword that's actually meant to stab somebody, and it's meant to crush somebody, not really chop. This is meant to crush, as well as stab. That didn't stab very well, but oh well. I'm gonna wear that one. I'm gonna keep it with me. I'm gonna just have this. You know what? I'm not gonna wear it right now though. I'll use it in the fight, but I ain't gonna wear it. This is the Viking war sword, more or less a symbol of status than an actual weapon to take into war because their iron forging was not exactly great. So a sword this long would risk bending or breaking, especially with such a wide fuller running the length of it. This way, it's going to have a lot of power, but if it's hit from the side or if the thrust goes wrong, you're going to snap your blade. So definitely more of a burial sword for like a great jarl than an actual weapon of war. All right, moving on to the wall. We're going to start at this end and work our way down. Just ba 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 boom. Starting with my favorite sword in the entire game, as well as in all of history, and a definite fan favorite, the Folks. This sword's curve allows it to pull an opponent into the cut. The blade is actually rather thin, for a great sword, but since it's long, you can make the bevel, which is like from from this cutting edge to this back, how quickly it widens. It's a very thin bevel going all the way to the back. So you can really get a good chop in there. The forward curve of it means it can reach around guards, and it's well weighted enough that you can wield it with one hand, as seen on almost all of my streams. Now, if I grab it way down here, it has a bit more wobble to it, but I'm not going to be grabbing it down there. I'm going to be grabbing up here so I can optional two-hand. You guys have seen me take limbs and legs off with this thing like it's fucking nothing. It is hands down my favorite type of slicing weapon, but it cannot stab, so you definitely need a wide, beautiful classroom to use it in, because trying to use it in a narrow corridor is suicide. Next up is the Ringneck War Sword. The reason I wanted to put this one on the wall of all the bastard swords it offers isn't just the copious amount of grip, because the game's longsword, the base game of Blade and Sorcery, has a longsword in it that is definitely about the size of the Ringneck War Sword. The reason I wanted to mention this one over the one the game mentions is that this one has no fuller. The other one has a fuller that stops, and then the blade continues with a full support. This has no fuller, all right? This is all weight all day. And the reason I want to mention that is because of how wide it is at the bottom. The entirety of the sword tapers towards the tip. Not just the sides. The sides aren't the only thing that tapers. The entirety of the sword tapers towards the tip. So this sword's definitely more of a chopper towards the bottom, a chop hacker, while at the top can actually get some really decent slices and stabs, which would then widen as you get towards the base, probably ripping and doing that same kind of thing that the Rondel dagger does, where they can't really fix the wound. Next up is the Nodachi, Japan's version of the Greatsword. Now, a lot of you are probably going to give me some shit on yesterday's episode about swords. I never mentioned any katanas or wakazashis. I feel like Japanese weapons in particular are so prevalent in modern media, I don't really need to cover them. Also, they're not really my favorite swords. I mean, I don't really like them, you know? I mean, there's nothing wrong with them. Don't get me wrong. There's nothing inherently terrible about them. But when you've got 1,000 other forms of sword that all do roughly the same thing, I don't see why katanas get such godhood, you know? Now, the Nodachi is a practical answer to an obvious problem. They needed a sword that would give them more reach over their opponent without being unwieldy. So not only did they increase the blade, they also increased the handle to allow one to get that leverage you needed to still move it with the regular speed of a katana, to still get that fluid chopping, slicing, slashing motions. And they were most famously used by the Date, which are in the northern part of Japan, I think. Editing Jake, correct me right here. Hi, this is Editing Jake with a map of Japan here, and yes, the Date were in the northern corner of Japan. Back to you, recording Jake. Thank you, Jake. Next up is the Crusader's longsword. Yes, the Crusader's sword, which has another elegant solution to the weight problem of having such a long sword. They went all fuller all day. I mean, look at that. All fuller all the way to the tip, meaning that if you stab with this, you definitely risk breaking your sword. Don't take any too hard hits to the side. Don't try and stab with this. But they offset the weight because this is beautifully well weighted. Like there's no lag on this. By making this metal bar wider than the handle, long and large at the bottom, this probably weighs about half of what this does. Meaning that a lot of this weight is pulled back and put in the handle, meaning that while the overall sword is a little heavier, it's easier to move the tip of the sword around because it has a counterbalance at the back. But that counterbalance isn't just a dead lump of weight like it would be on this guy and on this guy, because it's a grippable handle as well. I'm able to push on that weight to give myself even better leverage, which is why I could see this weapon actually being useful in the Crusades to an alarming degree, because it offers incredible handling for its weight. Which, by the way, again, Japanese blade, the Nodachi did not need that because the Nodachi's blade was not actually very heavy. A common thing about Japanese swords is that they're light, they're swift, and they can just kind of zoom, zoom, zoom through their targets, but the downside is that they're not exactly strong. Another reason I didn't go into them is that, like, this kind of blade, like the Ninjato, never actually existed. There was never a straight-backed fucking katana. It just, to Brazil with you, you freaking lie. It was made by Hollywood.
Hi, Editing Jake stepping back in here for a second. So, while no straight back swords like the Ninjato were ever really historically documented, they were popularized by Hollywood a lot. Um, there was a great chance that ninjas just used the wakizashi or the chokoto, I think it's pronounced, and that no actual ninja sword was ever really a thing. And its popular media and pop culture have blown the Ninjato way out of proportion, and it is to this day a big pet peeve of mine.
And you know, this kind of thing is just. So we'll get into that in its own episode. I'm going to make Japanese weapons their own episode because there's so much myth and mythology surrounding them. Next up, Executioner's Greatsword. The reason it's called the Executioner's Greatsword is because it was used by, guess what, the fucking Executioner. Now, as you can see, it has no tip. All right, it's not a rounded tip. It's not a blunted tip. It is no tip. All right, that's because this thing wasn't meant to stab at all. In fact, if you look, all the weight is on. Whoa, Jesus, high hand. All the weight is on this side of the blade and on this side of the blade, because this thing was meant to do one thing: chop. But who is it meant to chop? Prisoners. This was the solution to execution when they didn't want to use like an axe or some shit. They would get this great sword out and lop your head off with it, and it was spectacular and terrifying at the same time. Next up, we've got the bandit's solution to bad guys in the world, or to good guys coming for the bad guys in the world. This is called a chopper. It is essentially a falchion's blade, which I believe I covered in the swords episode, or in the slicing weapons episode. Falchions were just a thin blade used to hack off limbs and arms of unarmored opponents. They just took one of those and they put it on a stick to give themselves a bit more leverage on that chop, but to also give themselves more reach so that they could outreach the knights and whatnot that were coming for them. Now this thing's actually really deadly, and I'm gonna take it with me. It and the Didao are the similar concept, so I'm just gonna cover the whole benefits of it with the Didao. Next up is the Flamberge, and the reason I chose the Flamberge is because it's beautiful. These were wielded by the elite of the Landsknecht, which, by the way, the Landsknecht are the elite. The Landsknecht, I've covered them in the last two episodes. I'm going to talk a little bit about them again because they're one of my favorite mercenary groups in the world. The Landsknecht were elite German mercenaries. that would go through using pike and shot formations, as well as using Zwei handlers, which I have one on me. There it is. Using Zwei handlers to do all kinds of damage to the enemy's front line. When they got bogged down, they'd whip out their Cat's Boulder and their Lancey Dagger and just dual wield into hell. And they were fearsome opponents who could take on spear soldiers because of the insane reach of their blades. Now, this blade is wavy to act like serrets when it does draw strikes and slashes. Now, for those of you, I've covered serrets before. I'm going to cover them again. Thank you, Jake. That's what that's meant to act like, but without being as fragile as serret teeth. They're a lot more durable. Also, on the thrust, it creates a wider cut without actually making the blade wider and heavier. So that's also a really neat feature. Next, the Dadao, which I'm going to use to cover my chopper. The Dadao is a Chinese Dao, which a Dao is like their version of the falchion. The Dadao is called so because it's a little bit longer and a little bit longer. And this offered more leverage for the chopping. It allowed it to hit a lot harder. The Dao was often used, much like the scimitar in yesterday's episode, by Chinese pirates for the exact same reasons as the scimitar. It was short, it was really good at chopping, you didn't really need to stab with it. It was mostly used for cutting rope, for chopping off limbs, chopping off fish heads. You can actually oftentimes see Daos in like Chinese marketplaces, especially short Daos or clipped Daos being used by like ladies in Chinese marketplaces to just chop fish up and chop off octopus limbs, stuff like that. They're just really useful chopping weapons, and they're made to violent efficiency by illegal fishing crews all over those waters, all over Asian waters, pirates all over those waters, even Swahilan pirates and stuff like that. And way back in the day, they were often used by infamous Chinese pirates because they were just a very crude weapon to have on a boat. It was a very nasty weapon to have on a boat. So that's kind of all the same reasons as this guy, why it was popular. It was easy to make, very cheap weapon that you could just churn out and outfit an entire ragtag crew of bandits with, and it did its job really well. Last thing on the list is the Claymore. I don't really think I need to go into too much detail on the Claymore. Most of you have already seen these in pop culture. These are the kinds of, it's a Scottish two-handed greatsword that was made famous by the original William Wallace. The William Wallace you see with Mel Gibson, he's actually using a Zweihandler. He's not using a true Claymore. The Claymores are famous for their coxcomb grip, or their coxcomb hilt, which is this thing. But this one's a twisted Claymore because the grip here is twisted to allow for better grip. Claymores used all their weight. I'm going to whip out one of my back swords here. Boom, the Celtic longsword. It's an early rendition of the Claymore before they really refined their craft. As you can see, this one's half fullered with a strong tip just in case I need to thrust. But it has that same V-shaped grip that a lot of Scottish Claymores are famous for, which would allow it to catch blades right in there and stop them. Two hands, incredibly heavy. You can tell kind of by the game's lag there on the wrist. Very heavy weapon. A lot of weight coming down. These things were used to just crush the opposition, slice shields in half, break shield walls, break shield screens. Really, any kind of resistance you had, you just crash right through it like a tidal wave of death. All right, man of the hour, the Zweihandler. Large grip here. Right here, to give myself plenty of room to hold on to. Massive freaking hand protection coming out on both sides, not just to catch enemy blades and put things through the ring to snap or to ensnare, but also so I can grab this and really drive this thing forward if I'm leaning into the thrust. I can also half hand by grabbing up here onto this grip. That way I have a bit better leverage towards the tip. It's now more a sword's length. And as you can see, I can wield that a lot easier than I can wield this. See how wobbly that is? And especially if I grab down here, it's woo. But that wobble's erased when I'm up here because now I'm gripping up a lot closer to the blade. And to protect my hand up here, I've got these little catches here, which would still catch enemy blades, but also If I ram this thing into somebody, bam, and they slide all the way down, shkunk, they're going to hit these and stop, allowing me to turn the sword over, pull the sword out, their body slides off the end, and I keep fighting. The Landsneech were able to take on 12 men at a time with a sword this large by being clever about they're not just swinging for the fences. They would block, strike across, half hand, ting, bam, ting, ting, grab down here, grab here, drive it down, bring it back. They were excellent swordsmen who trained day in and day out, day in and day out, day in and day out to master their craft because that's how they made their money. Nobody wants to hire mercenaries who are known for losing. Everyone wants to hire the mercenaries who are known for being the best. All right, gonna put you on my hip. I'm now fully loaded. We've covered all the source material. Time for some demonstrations. Come on, book. There we go. It's a little picky sometimes. All right, we're gonna start with this guy. There's a little bit of a lag to him. Not much. See that? Right in through the body. Right in through the body because of that needle tip. Didn't even slow down. See, you can't just push it in though. So the game doesn't oh, yes you can. I take it back. It's the plate here he had on his chest that's stopping me. There you go. Once you get to the edge of that plate, it just slides right into his body. Oh. Oh, that is sharp. All right, real quick. I'm going to turn on my teaching aids here. Boop, boop. And I'll do that one just for funsies. All right, next up, we're going to test the... Whoa. You are just sinking into the dirt. How much lower can you go? Whoa! I think this is as low as it goes. He actually brought out a dagger dagger sword thing I've been meaning to use for a while. The Basilard Falchion. I'm gonna get you off the... There we go. All right, we're gonna try one more. This time we're gonna focus on the slashing potential of this sword. There's my friend. All right, I'm gonna try and dodge his first strike. All right, that definitely hit him like a ton of bricks. You can see the spurting blood here hitting the wall and stuff. That hit him. Ooh, it might have been because he was on the spike, but hit him right here in the head, and that was just it, man. Yep, I see not a lot of weight required to take a limb off with something like this because it already has so much weight coming down. All right, gonna throw you back on the table. Moving on to my other hip with the chopper. I expect this thing to chop really well. Two-hit kill, not bad. Oof, yeah, those are deep cuts. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, if I get a good swing and I'm taking a head off with this. Hold on. Alright, come on out. Let's get this over with. One good swing, all I need. I missed! Oh, I didn't get his head. Yeah, that's a deep cutter right there. And it's not even the weight of the blade that's doing it. It's the extra leverage you get when you pull and push. Bam! Every hit is death. Those are all really deep cuts. Oof, gruesome. Alright, moving on to what I got on my shoulders. Starting with the Celtic longsword, this wobbly weighted boy. See, the wobble goes away when I hold it in the other hand as well, because now I'm two-handing this thing as it's meant to be used. Its weight is now well compensated. Oh, I got way too close. I need to use... There we go. There we go. I need to remember to use the range. The whole thing about greatswords are you're getting in the way. You know that? I need to remember to use my range, and that's really difficult for me because I got no fucking depth perception. So, that's why I never cared for massive swords. With no depth perception, I can't really use them effectively. But as you can see, that crushed right through his block. That's crushing his block and coming in around it. Eh. Ugh. Ow. Gross. Yeah. That weapon has enough force to just crush through his one-handed block. Alright. It's Y handler time. Hmm. Oh, he's still alive. There we go. Say, I hit him and he just dropped. I thought he was dead already. Alright, let's get an... Oh. We're going to get another one coming. This time we're going to choke up on our grip and try to go for that slice thrust. So they come in, they swing, we block, slice, thrust. Oh, work like a charm. So I got her right in the cooch. And you just grab and you just drive. There it is. Yep. So you can choke up to get an... I'm gonna do one more. And I'm gonna really just fucking smack somebody with this thing. Oh my god, it hit him so hard it knocked him to the ground. Oh, I broke his nose into his face. Oh, that's gruesome. Hold on. And then there we go. No. I need to prove that the things will stop you. Come on. Stay on. See, look. It stops him, and then you can just slide him off the end and keep going. This caught his body. That's awesome. Alright, now it wouldn't be a greatsword episode if I didn't do a slight humble brag and show you guys my sweet, sweet baby. So... here we go. Done. Done. Shing. Done. Oh, done. Definitely done. Done. Definitely done. Done. Done again. Whoa, I got hit in the back. Done. Oh, look at that. A mound of my success. So yeah, this is one of the greatest greatswords in my opinion. It's just such a nasty weapon. Just a harvester. Just a harvester. A harvester of heads. She has a body in the way. There we go. Oh, I didn't even mean to get that part of you. I wanted your leg. I didn't mean to get your arm. There we go. It just goes right through. It just goes right through. There's no stopping it. Now, the reason I love the Falk so much is exactly that. All these other weapons, when they channel their weight into the hit, it's a flat surface that you're hitting with. You're hitting with a blade, a straight, flat blade. Granted, you're hitting with a wavy blade, that'll help. Flat blade, curved blade, which will help in the slice, but also pushes out of the cut, allowing, granted, it keeps the sword from getting stuck in them, which this sword will do. That's why when I hit, I pull back, but this pushes their body into the cut, meaning that it's either through or deep in. There's no narrow, no shallow with this weapon. And I just love that. I love it so much. It's so unique. If I was to ever buy like one of the swords from this game, it would be that. It would be a Falx. I want a Falx so fucking bad. All right. Well, that concludes today's episode on GreatSwords. Thank you everybody for coming. Class dismissed.